I grew up playing the basketball with the boys, so like it's always been physical and feisty, and like that's what it is. And you got to find a way to hold your own.
Clark, Caitlin. 2 minutes ago, the unimaginable happened. The best in the WNBA. The star abruptly quit, upsetting fans. Teammates broken and startled. Rumors whirl in the darkness. Was it a cruel, having a falling out with league officials? A. Hideous injury? Or A. Is scandal too risky to say out loud? The voice of Sophie Cunningham broke. Lexie. Hull's eyes stung. There's sorrow, overflowing into the cameras. The arena feels heavier and the stillness colder. What? Could the truth make Clark leave? Everything will be rocked by the replies. The enigma of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who changed the overnight. The WNBA has emerged as the focal point of the most perplexing storm in the league. Simply, a few days ago, she wasn't just having fun, but dominating, scoring more points than her team. Help, and even the headlines every night. She wasn't having trouble, she wasn't hurt. And she most definitely wasn't absent procedures. The spark was her. That increased television and filled arenas, ratings, and attracted a completely new surge of admirers. However, in a moment she disappeared. No notice, no justification. Just silence. Like a wildfire, the astonishment spread. Inside minutes, the number of theories increased. A few whispers from those near the game regarding the phrase load management is frequently applied to conceal minor wounds or relax. Others implied ambiguous disciplinary grounds. But the parts were not compatible. Clark hadn't violated the regulations. She hadn't disregarded teammates. Indeed, she was performing flawlessly on the court and away from it. That's what caused it feels less like a benching when you disappear, more like to an eraser. Something deeper was happening, and those viewing, in their bones, they sensed it, then arrived. Behind closed doors, the murmurs. Those who are aware of internal league conversations revealed an increasing conflict between Clark and some senior officials. Her quick ascent was not solely about accumulating points. It was regarding her voice. Interviews after games became the news. Moments, videos of her being blunt on social media. Honesty bounced throughout all platforms. She wasn't abiding by the unwritten norm of merging in. She stood out, and not all those at the top appeared to at ease with that. One rumor in, a specific person lighted the fuse. During a confidential meeting, Clark is accused of contested league marketing tactics, referring to them as detached and tone-deaf. From the supporters she believed she stood for, her statements weren't sugar-coated. She refused to submit to authority. She said, clearly, and in accordance with those in attendance, the exchange didn't go well. Within 48 hours, her court appearances started to reduce. In 72 hours, she was benched. Entirely. It got worse. No press conferences, no interviews, no straight declarations. It appeared as though someone had a switch flipped, causing one of the brightest lights in the league into a ghost. But her admirers wouldn't let her vanish. Hashtag and other hashtags, but Caitlin started trending in a matter of hours. Sections for comments are brimming with indignation. Demands. Transparency reverberated on Instagram, X, as well as TikTok. Thousands of devoted. The truth was demanded by supporters. NBA players chimed in, referring to the way the league handled Clark was dubious, calculating, even insensitive to the integrity of the game. Everyone left unanswered. Suspicion was increased by the query, and the WNBA's silence only amplified the commotion. What started out as misunderstanding has now changed into disobedience. This isn't only about quiet now. It concerns muting. Additionally, as each hour goes by, Caitlin Clark's mystery continues to expand. thicker, putting pressure on a league already having trouble managing the
story.
To begin with, the WNBA isn't just fighting a controversy.
It's
battling the fans who won't look away. Additionally, as Sophie Cunningham lights up the fire, one unanswered question still stands. Will the WNBA endure if it remains silent? Encourages rebellion?
Keep an eye out.
The flames are started by Sophie Cunningham.
When
Caitlin Clark disappeared during the spotlight, the quiet was oppressive. But into that quiet stepped Sophie
Cunningham.
And everything changed. Reporters continued to rush for fragments of knowledge.
Supporters were
sending angry messages to league inboxes, and the leadership of the WNBA said nothing.
Sophie then said something. She didn't tiptoe.
She didn't use language that were safe. She left charred ground. It took place in a interview after the game that ought to have been standard. In place of courteous platitudes, and Sophie gave scripted sound bites, a line that exploded across the athletic, the world. You don't ignore your greatest star unless her power scares you. As soon as she finished speaking, the room's air froze. Stunned, reporters leaned forward.
And
prior to the league's public relations team drafting, that footage erupted with only one response. Throughout social media, in a matter of hours, it was all over Instagram and TikTok, Reels, podcasts, and highlight channels. Like an anthem, fans played it over and over. However, Sophie was far from done. What might have one outburst turned into a unrelenting campaign. In her podcast, she intensified, charging the league with retribution, something darker. Clark's benching, she said, had nothing to do with pertaining to basketball and anything to do with politics.
Sophie, the league,
heated, had a greater need for control rather than advancement, more preoccupied with defending its power rather than honoring the variability that maintained the league alive. She went farther than most athletes, daring to speak out loud what many others whispered. Clark's punishment in private was a cautionary tale to remind athletes what occurs when they use excessively bold language can glow too brightly. Her remarks cut like a dagger, piercing the silence.
In
Sophie reiterated the team meetings on transmits in real time. She wouldn't compromise her stance. She had no fear of repercussions since, in her opinion, there was no danger in drawing or losing minutes. Penalties. The league was able to eliminate of the key participants without a battle in this generation. Additionally, the fans answered. Her bravery turned into contagious. Anger gave way to action with hashtags. Free Clark and Sophie started to stand together, moving in tandem, supported by countless voices. What began as one declaration has evolved into a movement, a expanding flow that the league could stop ignoring it. Fans came together not only for Sophie as well as for Clark, praising the only player who was willing to take a chance as her. Everything to highlight what they thought to be unfair. There was a spark, not what the WNBA had expected, and it spread more quickly than anyone could stop it. The fire was no longer about one player's absence. It concerned credibility of the entire league. A door had been thrown open by Sophie Cunningham, something the WNBA fervently desired to retain.
Close.
And there were facts behind it that threatens to alter the course of events for the
game.
What started out as Caitlin's absence is now consumes the league's ability to survive. However, what? The shocking reality concealed underneath Lexie Hull's quiet? Continue to observe. The silence is broken by Lexie Hull. The fire in Sophie Cunningham's house had already rocked the league's boundaries. However, the storm intensified the very next day. When Lexie Hull entered the conflict, she used a different form of power to accomplish it. She didn't make a lengthy declaration.
She
did not take a seat for a comfortable podcast, and She didn't rely on meticulously practiced
Lines.
Rather, she stepped directly into. After practice, the press room adjusted to her. Eyes on the cameras and let one fall. Phrase that went deeper than any
Speech.
If it is possible to treat Caitlin Clark, what do you suppose they'll do, such as this? To the others? The room went cold.
No.
Spin, no gloss. Simply the unvarnished truth.
Nude.
Reporters ceased their scrawling. The players in the back, who were listening, changed. In a matter of minutes, the clip exceeded the boundaries of women's basketball. Not all of them were WNBA supporters. No longer reacting.
It was all around
The realm of sports. From ESPN commentators to commenters on YouTube are all reiterating the same astonished query. What precisely is taking place behind closed doors at the WNBA? Lexie continued after that. After several hours, she shared a remarkable image in black and white of herself and Caitlin Clark together.
The
Loyalty was the only word in the caption.
that
One word set off a chain reaction of conjecture. Was she yelling? In the locker room? Betrayal?
was it?
Intended for management? Was it a cautionary tale too? Are teammates being pressured to remain silent? Although no one was certain, the timing seemed unavoidable, and the uncertainty merely increased the tension. Behind the scenes, rumors started to circulate. Insiders asserted that Lexie was now among the most vocal participants in team meetings since the dispute started. As said by one,
Account she faced off against.
mentoring employees, requesting an explanation. The only player that regularly sells out. Suddenly, arenas were adhered to the bench. According to the article, her teammates supported her.
Up.
What had begun as rumors of divides swiftly within the locker room poured into the news stories, creating a image of a group no longer bound together under the burden of confidentiality. Furthermore, it wasn't only her own group. Lexie made a suggestion that players from several teams had been silently surviving conversations outside of the league and cameras. Authorities exchanging anxieties and annoyances with the way the Clark they were dealing with the matter. There was genuine pressure to remain silent, but so was the increasing resolve to prevent unnoticed the moment passes. According to sources, Lexie was assisting in assemble a team of younger athletes, players who felt confined by outdated politics, fed up with being instructed to play, grin, and remain silent despite they were erasing voices. Next came the tweets, mysterious, sentimental, and unavoidable. Specifically one sent shockwaves and then vanished. Stop if you wish to leave a legacy. Keeping those who produce it silent. Admirers took a quick screenshot of it.
Inside.
Hours, it was all over Reddit. Fan forums, TikTok modifications, and posts. Some thought the statement was directed directly at WNBA leaders. Others said that it was aimed at media personalities, said to have minimized the controversy. However, one thing brought everyone together. Lexie wasn't merely responding to what happened.
She was
Launching an offensive against silence itself. Sophie Cunningham and Lexie together. Hull was now on the front line.
2.
Athletes who are prepared to take any and all risks by revealing facts that others have buried.
Additionally, with
The league abruptly disregarded their defiance. Encountered not only a dispute, but the precursors to a full-scale rebellion. Thus, how far will Lexie and Sophie Cunningham go? Hull's disobedience forces the WNBA to rebirth or collapse. Hold on tight. There will be a revolution. The tide is turned by the fans. After Sophie, Lexie, Hull, and Cunningham broke the quiet as though a match had been hit in a gasoline-filled room. The admirers didn't merely respond, they exploded.
what?
Started as indignation but soon changed into an online uprising.
So loud.
And unrelenting, which the WNBA was unable to. Don't pretend to hear anymore. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, and the platform suddenly sprang to life. Hashtags were abundant. In a flood, across temporal periods. Hashtag justice. Hashtag free Caitlin. Hashtag stops for Clark. Muting the stars. They all carried more weight than the official league declarations, since each one arrived directly from those who filled stadiums, purchased jerseys, and broadcast games with a fervor. Hours later, the WNBA. People were flooding in with accounts. Each post regarding a highlight, a sponsorship, or an event for charity was taken over with irate remarks requesting responses. Sports discussion boards, typically teeming with arguments about statistics and tactics, turned into battlefields of annoyance and suspicion. However, the rebellion continued. At hashtags, fans turned into detectives. They began examining game footage, extracting, comparing minutes played, freezing frames, and creating timelines that conveyed a narrative. The league declined to provide an explanation. A few video footage showed Clark being pushed on. Her body struck hard as she drove to the hoop, without the officials blowing a whistle. Others emphasized the perplexing decline in her minutes, even if she was still post-stellar figures next to each other.
Comparisons showed that.
Unsettling. Other stars, however, were honored. Clark's reporting on the WNBA's own accounts on social media has faded silently. The results disseminated, similar to wildfire. Splicing videos on TikTok, combining footage of failed foul calls. Millions of views were obtained. Reddit. Her playing time was broken down into threads with forensic accuracy. Screenshots of the official league accounts prior to and following the controversy's widespread circulation, with supporters charging the WNBA with purposefully shoving Clark from the
spotlight.
The story was no longer merely one player being placed on the bench.
It
had grown into a larger entity, a trial in public of the league's legitimacy. Furthermore, the fans weren't. They were shouting, whispering, "Why hide the star who brought us here?" A post that went viral inquired if they are able to remove. What does that signify, Caitlin Clark, for the game's future? The inquiries increased in volume with each share. Please retweet each post. The uprising was no longer available online. It had become a movement's beating heart, connecting through the culture of sports with a too powerful a force for the league to
contain.
However, what did the league release? When Lexie and Sophie drew their boundaries in the beach, revolution or rebellion remain. Join us as we solve more mysteries. The utterance that backfired. For over 2 days, the league declared nothing. Online, the chants became louder. Players were criticizing the management, straight, as well as the storm surrounding Caitlin. Clark was not going to back down. When the WNBA eventually spoke up, the time that ought to have calmed tensions only served to exacerbate the fire. A well-crafted comment surfaced through the official channels of the league. The voice sounded formal, businesslike, and oddly cut off from reality.
It
didn't specifically address Caitlin Clark. It failed to recognize the increasing dispute or the charges of